It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Welcome to RealAg Radio. It is time for Tuesdays with Lyndsey. I am Lyndsey Smith. I am your host. I will be with you, yes, today, but also all week. So super excited to be filling in for host Sean Haney while he takes a very well-deserved break. Okay, we've got a great show lined up. Did want to just mention quickly, Kelvin Heppner is going to join me at the end of the show to talk some news. And I'm not sure if we'll get to it, but I did want to mention there was actually frost that happened in parts of Alberta over the weekend, which may bring up some questions about canola, green seed and canola. So we'll perhaps dig into that later this week. But if that happened to you, let us know if you've got questions about whether or not we've got green seed lock happening in canola. We are, of course, watching very closely as wildfires are absolutely raging across parts of BC, the Northwest Territories, and even parts of Alberta. So we're watching that as well. But today we're going to focus on a few kind of different things, maybe including a clip from the Agronomists last night talking about corn diseases. I've also got a really interesting discussion lined up to talk about how we train the next generation of meat processing talent and some of the innovations there. So that's super cool. And Megz Reynolds with the Do More Ag Foundation is going to join me later in the show to talk about strategies for dealing with a very stressful harvest. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and I will be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
At the 2023 Canadian Beef Industry Conference, RealAg Radio did a live broadcast in front of the audience, and we focused on managing your farm business through adversity. We're talking right now to Todd Miller. He is CEO of Tech Canada. Todd, I want to hit on decision making. What are some suggestions you have in terms of making good decisions during very stressful times?
The pre-existing solution to all problems lies within the questions you ask. So in essence, if you can find yourself in a room with like-minded individuals, regardless of industry, the process to follow is to really say, how do I do this? And state that very, very clearly. Give a little bit of background and state why it's important. Make sure that everyone has a vested interest in just to what you're trying to accomplish, and start probing each other and really asking really deep questions, and all of a sudden, an answer prevails. The pre-existing solution to all problems lies within the questions you ask.
Introducing the all-new Xerion 12 Series tractor by Kloss. Redesigned from the ground up to redefine the high-capacity four-wheel drive market. With 653 max horsepower, industry-leading hydraulic flow, a silky smooth CVT, a powerful TerraTrack undercarriage, and a quiet, comfortable cab with 20% more legroom. More than just power. The all-new Xerion by Kloss.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Tuesday, August 22nd. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. This segment is brought to you by Granubor from US Borax. Ask for it by name. All right. Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, you probably know by now, I host a live show called The Agronomists. It happens every Monday, except holiday Mondays, at 8 p.m. Eastern, as I said, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or you can head on over to realagriculture.com/agronomists. It will go live there as well, and you can see past episodes too. So last night I had with me Dale Cowan and John Saliga, two great agronomists from here in Ontario, and we discussed tar spot and gibberella. So what I've done is I've gone back to last night's broadcast and I've picked out two really interesting points, one on tar spot, one on gibberella, and the management of both. And so if you grow corn, if you're curious about either of these diseases, this is a must listen. Some really cool things. And you know what? The mark of a great Agronomists episode is that I learned something. And so stick around to the end of this clip. Dale discusses how the window for Gibberella infection is like a 10 to 12 hour window. And he explains why. Specifically with tar spot, now it may move by wind, but do we just assume that we will have enough that is in Ontario soils or residue now? Do we just assume that it is potentially present regardless of spore load that comes in on the breeze?
Well, it depends on the field. I talked about, one thing I didn't mention was the history of your field. If you got a history, and we're starting to build a history with tar spot now after 3 or 4 years. So no, let's not discount storm fronts moving up the Ohio Valley. They bring spores. So, I mean, that's how tar spot got here in the first place. Okay. We think it came from up through the Midwest or across from Michigan. Doesn't really matter. It's here. But yeah, that's how things get here originally on the wind, and then get here quite quickly on the wind. So. Mm-hmm. But okay. As John said, whether they infect or not is what are the conditions that support the infection. So.
Okay, absolutely. So some really good questions on spray efficacy. And I do want to get to some of those, but perhaps before we do that, let's talk just about overall sort of risk that, because I think, Dale, you've got a good photo of spray miss. So just showing essentially what the infection level could look like for those areas that did spray, and what that is. So Jay, if you can bring up, I think it's the second one that Dale sent. Sorry, I should have looked at the numbers, producer Jay. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a leaf. So this field was sprayed with a helicopter, and I'm not trying to say that a helicopter is bad. Helicopters can't get in the corners next to tall trees or hydro towers or windmills, so they pull up, right? They don't want to crash. So this is a little corner in the field that got missed, and this was sprayed 3 weeks ago. So this gives you an idea that we found 1 or 2 lesions on the leaf below the ear, and here's 3 weeks later. This shows you how fast this disease moves. That's what they call a polycyclical disease. You have the stroma that makes spores, and those spores make more stroma, and those stroma make more spores, and away it goes. So it just this corn looks like it's end of October already, and it's just not even September yet. So it just shows you how extent. So this was a miss in a field. I can't honestly say I've seen enough differences between ground rigs and helicopter to say one's better over the other. I see as good efficacy on either one. It's a question of misses in corners and misses around trees, and we see that with ground rigs, and sometimes a ground rig wanders a little bit and tramples some corn. So there's always trade-off and compromises. So I wouldn't say that I do ground rig only. Sometimes we simply have to get across the acres in a very short time frame. And so we need all the services. We it's only recently we've built up our ground rig capacity, and we really need to count on air, especially with tar spot, to get the fields covered in a hurry. So,
yeah, John, are you seeing some of the similar sort of in the misses? You're seeing higher infection?
Absolutely, yeah. You cannot minimize how fast this disease can progress. It really, it's stunning. And in 2021, when we first really got a look at it, we had a plot just outside of Pancourt, and by the middle of September, there were essentially 2 hybrids left with a couple of green leaves on the plant at the top. Everything else was completely senesced. Yeah. And I think what we're learning in time is, like, from a hybrid resistance or tolerance standpoint, is there's resistance or tolerance to infection, but then there's this play on leaf senescence, and there's differences between hybrids in terms of how quickly the actual senescence occurs. Some products and some germplasm has the ability to get infected by stroma and yet continue to maintain enough green leaf tissue to continue to photosynthesize. Do we completely understand this? Absolutely not. And we're still building a database on it. But that's one of the things that we're noticing as we, assess and score plots.
So, Dale, walk me through how important it has become when you're working with your clients, perhaps on hybrid selection and those sorts of things. Is it relatively easy to navigate tar spot resistance or tolerance within what we have out there, or are we still at sort of the beginning of this on the hybrid side?
I think we're still at the beginning. We only started looking at hybrids in basically 2021, 2022. It takes a while to score and rank them. And so not saying we'll never get there. I'm just saying, we only got to Gib ear rot susceptibility ratings 2 years ago. So tar spots on top of that now. So I think we'll get there eventually. As John says, we see differences in hybrids, no question. So we just have to get there, and certainly farmers need to know what their risks are when they're buying seed corn. So I'm certainly hope that we can get there shortly.
John, do you know, has tar spot moved up as far as the importance in hybrid selection? Would you know from your company's perspective on sort of what the focus becomes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, the breeders have a pretty significant focus on tar spot, and we're utilizing our, both our internal research plots as well as what we call our product knowledge plots that each of the sales reps would put out. We're using those to collect information on a yearly basis, trying to accelerate what we know about the hybrids. And then, of course, the breeders are using that to understand the inbred part of the mix so that they can work on developing newer, stronger products. In the case, not to get off a tar spot, but just to mention, northern corn leaf blight, we do have identified genes of resistance, the HT genes. I would fully expect that in time we're going to find or identify genes that will be able to support some level of tolerance to this disease in the tar spot world.
Absolutely. All right. I do want to switch gears. So in talking about Gib, Dale, you've already sort of hit on one of the things that, of course, is so important is, who is growing the crop and what is that crop destined for, right? Because, of course, if we're talking about hogs, or, is it dairy cattle? Is it hogs? Is it beef cattle? Like, where is this going? These are the things we need to know. That's, of course, a key thing. So now, Kevin, who is a dairy farmer, he says a fungicide app is just beginning to become a thing in his area to control the mycotoxin, so the DON, created by the Gibberella. So any idea on how much starch increase, if any, occurs because of fungicide application in silage analysis? Dale, I'll go to you on this one. Is it all about the DON, or are we getting a better quality product when we're trying to target that Gibberella control?
Yes. That good? Not a good enough answer?
No, I want more. Kevin needs a full explanation of why.
Well, of course, it can't get rid of. Let's talk about suppression, and it's always incidence and severity. So let's reduce the risk. Right. This is about risk management, not risk elimination. So let's reduce the risk of mycotoxic contamination. So recent research has shown it's not just swine, it's poultry and it's dairy and beef, and it affects the autoimmune system in the plant and some other general health. So it's a question of certainly Gib ear rots will reduce yield, reduce grain quality. So get rid of the degree of infection, you will improve your feed quality. I don't think that's a giant leap of logic. The thing that's frustrating with Gib, and I go back to 2018, the infection window through the silk channel. So when you have a green silk, it plugs the cob. You can't get any infection from Gib on a green silk. It's not till the silk turns brown and it shrinks back that allows the germinating spore to get in and colonize the tip of the cob. So, and even at that, it's like a 10 to 12 hour window of opportunity. And if the conditions are just perfect, right amount of moisture and the presence of the inoculum and the silk channel is open, you'll get a beginning of infection. So in 2018, I was on a farm that grew the same hybrid 2 miles apart on opposite sides of the road. One field was absolutely hammered with DON, and the other field, same hybrid, totally clean, just planted 2 days later. So the synchronization of the silk emergence, the presence of disease, it was different. I've seen farmers with split planters, 2 different hybrids on the planter, 8 rows just absolutely polluted with ear rot, and the other 8 rows perfectly fine. Silk 2 days apart, right? So this complicates understanding how gib infects and which hybrid is more susceptible or not. Anybody's hybrid, in my mind, can be susceptible at any time if the conditions are just whatever they are at that point. And I don't think Art Shashma is really a very knowledgeable person on this, and I'm sorry to see him retire, but I guess he's still around, and he understands it's disease forward and backwards. And so it's a very definitive set of situations that cause the infection to occur. And some fields you get it, some fields you don't. And that's the frustrating part about it. And of course, once it develops, it's not uniformly distributed in a sample anyway. So then you're aggravated by one sample's good, the next sample isn't, right? So it's just a lot of things. So yeah, I like John. I like. So when it comes to the feed industry, what's the feed industry do? So at the beginning of harvest, nobody wants a high dawn corn. Nobody's going to fill up a silo with 20 ppm dawn corn and harvest begins. So they're going to put that aside until we learn how to use that. And that's what happened in 2018. We took all the good corn. Everybody contracts number 2 yellow. Nobody contracts number 5 corn. And so we had to have some farmers just wait to harvest until we found a home for high dawn corn, which we did eventually. Mind you, at a discount.
All right. Huge thanks to Dale Cowan, to John Saliga for joining me last night on The Agronomists. It was a lot of fun. Some great questions. Really appreciate it. And of course, big thanks to producer Jay for being there with us as well. Okay. We're going to switch gears a little. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I've got a conversation with Luis Garcia. He's with Meat and Poultry Ontario. And we're going to talk about a new center setting up here in the province.
Kochia sucks.
Big time. And hate it. Really gets in the way. Awful.
But not anymore. Get a head start on tough-to-kill weeds like kochia this fall with Volterra EZ and Fierce EZ Soil Active Herbicide. Apply after harvest before freeze-up for up to 8 weeks of extended control in pulses, soybeans, and wheat next spring. Volterra EZ, Fierce EZ for kochia. Visit newfarm.ca/kochia.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
Did you know that Pioneer now has a full lineup of Enlist E3 soybeans? Take a look at Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans for the highest yield potential and for the best agronomic package and herbicide trait options. From the lab to the field, Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans are the best in beans, period. Ask your local Pioneer representative about Enlist E3 beans.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now is Luis Garcia, Director of the Center for Meat Innovation and Technology. And we're about to find out what that even actually is. Luis, welcome here.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on the radio with you and to tell you a little bit more about the Center for Meat Innovation and Technology.
Yes. Okay. So it's pretty cool. So this was announced back in April. And so we're just kind of catching up here because I wanted to see how things have sort of gone and where this is going. But maybe let's back up a little. You're with Meat and Poultry Ontario, which I think the audience has heard from Franco, I think a time or two. But just to remind everyone, who or what is Meat and Poultry Ontario?
Yes. So I am the director for the Center for Meat Innovation and Technology, which is an initiative of Meat and Poultry Ontario. And MPO, or Meat and Poultry Ontario, is an industry association that represents meat and poultry processors. That includes abattoirs, meat shops, meat processors in Ontario. And so I work for MPO, And we're set up to address some of the challenges that the industry is facing.
Mm-hmm. Which I think we can probably guess what some of those are. Talent might be one of them, attracting new people. So now tell me then, because that's one of my guesses, but I've been wrong before, why the Center for Meat Innovation and Technology? Why has this come to be?
Okay, so MPO has done a lot of research in the last several years, and they identified needs and challenges and planned a solution to address these challenges. And this has been in the works for a few years. At the end of 2021, they met with the University of Guelph, specifically the Animal Biosciences Department, and they agreed to collaborate and work together in setting up the center. So, and the basis for this collaboration is that the Department of Animal Biosciences in Guelph has facilities that are CFIA inspected, so federally registered, and those facilities are fully equipped harvest room and meat cutting room and a meat processing room, which would provide the space and the resources for the center to develop technologies and provide support, basically, to the industry. So that was at the end of 2021. Then in March 2022, I came on board to start the strategic planning for the center, and that's how it all started back in 2022.
So as you mentioned, it's been a couple of years sort of coming together. So now the center is going to do what? Are you going to be training people? Are you going to be showing, students that the meat processing industry is a place that they could grow a career? What's sort of your hope for what might unfold here as the center gets up and going? Yeah, so the main challenges that were identified by MPO were labor, of course, talent attraction, as you mentioned it a few minutes ago, and also technology adoption. So at the center, and after completing our strategic plan, we came up with 4 pillars for the center. One of them is developing career pathways. And that includes training, but also creating ways to show new talent that there are different pathways and different career options within the meat and poultry industry. Mm-hmm. So in terms of training, we're going to do upskilling of the existing workforce, but we're also going to do skills development for new people in the industry to try to attract new talent. And that includes domestic talent, but also newcomers to Canada. So career pathways and training is one of our 4 pillars. The other one we're calling innovation for competitiveness, and that is all about technology adoption. Mm-hmm. And by technology, I don't necessarily mean IT related. It's really everything that involves technology. So robotics and automation, digitization of processes from our current pen and paper systems in many smaller operators to Internet of Things and other technology solutions that are available today. So we're going to work with technology suppliers on the latest technologies, and we're going to support the specifically or especially the small and medium-sized companies in adopting these technologies. Mm-hmm. So with the access to facilities at the University of Guelph, we're able to, for example, demonstrate equipment and technologies to processors. The third pillar for the center is supporting and promoting fundamental research that is conducted and has been conducted for decades by the University of Guelph researchers in meat science. This is work that is not readily recognized by industry, and that is fundamental to everything industry does. There's a scientific
basis to everything the industry does. So we're going to highlight and showcase that fundamental research, but mostly we will also want to strengthen the linkages between the researchers and industry. We want to help create more linkages and strengthen the current ones. And then our fourth pillar is collaboration. We really want to work in collaboration with any organization, any company that wants to work with us. We want to be a hub for industry to come to us for help, and we want to be that connector that will either help them directly or point them in the right direction to where the solution to their challenge is. So that is, in a nutshell, what our strategic plan encompasses in our four pillars.
So now I think about, that's an extensive and I think a very well thought out list if we think about what some of the challenges are here in Ontario. And I don't think Ontario, of course, is unique in this if we think about other provinces as well. But you mentioned, the innovation side, the technology side, moving perhaps the digitization of things. So from pen and paper, moving different processors along or towards a step or several steps forward. Do you think it's harder to go from like pen and paper based to an operation that works really well, or harder to go from something that's sort of already been digitized, that sort of stuff, but now you're going to make the next leap? Which is the hardest leap, do you think, to make?
I think the hardest is going from pen and paper to the next stage, which could be just using an Excel file. It is that step from, again, pen and paper to using a computer, to then going on to using a barcode reader or an RFID reader at the abattoir, which are very popular and very common in many instances, but that not everybody is following those practices. I think that is the hardest leap, and we're trying to help our members at MPO with understanding how this technology is really not that complicated to use and adopt, and how it can solve and address a lot of their challenges, especially in relation to labor shortages, which, as you know, we're facing right now.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Now, just in the last few minutes we have here, there was some funding put aside for this. You're working, obviously, with the University of Guelph. I read that there's, a vision for within a certain time frame for the center to essentially be a fee-for-service funding model for the most part. How much of a challenge do you feel that will be in sort of the longer-term plan for the center?
Yeah, no question. It is going to be a big challenge. However, we are working right now with funding from the provincial government, from the Ontario Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. That's how we operated last year and how we're operating this year. But our plan is to eventually make the center self-sustainable through fee-for-service, through a fee-for-service model. So we are already doing, for example, custom harvesting of different species. So we are charging a fee for that. We're also doing new product development, new process development for different clients. We're offering training, which of course there's a fee to attend training. So eventually we want to be self-sustainable. It's going to take a few years, but that's the goal.
All right, Luis, this is fascinating stuff, and certainly, as someone here in Ontario, there's been many discussions about, what the processing industry needs, and I think there's some really exciting things ahead for this center. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Just one last word. If anybody is interested in coming to see the facilities in Guelph, please don't hesitate and reach out to me, Luis, Luis, at meatpoultryon.ca. I'd be happy to have you over and give you a tour of the facilities.
Does that include me? Because I will 100% come for a tour.
Of course, Lyndsey. Yes,
okay,
it does include you.
All
Anytime.
right.
You're welcome to come for a visit.
Okay, next time I'm in Guelph, we're going to go for a tour. All right, thank you, Luis. I appreciate it.
Excellent.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
When it comes to the productivity and efficiency of your operation, every decision counts. One of those decisions is how you fuel your equipment. You need to be sure that it will run efficiently and without unnecessary downtime. Count on Co-op and your local Co-op fuel team to keep your equipment running smoothly with seasonally blended high-quality fuels and premium lubricants with guaranteed performance. We are Western Canadian. We are fueling harvest. We are Co-op.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now is Megz Reynolds. She's the Executive Director of the Dumore Agriculture Foundation. Welcome here, Megz.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Megz. It is, of course, we're rolling very quickly into the heat of harvest here. It is a stressful time of year on the best of days. But, of course, this year, for many producers, causing excessive stress, given the conditions we're under. What are things like, specifically in Saskatchewan, where you're from, but what are you hearing from, everyone in your role with Dumore?
Definitely weather and how that's affecting farming. So if you look at a lot of areas in Saskatchewan and Alberta and some areas elsewhere in the country, you're seeing a lot of excessive drought. And it's not just the first year that farmers are dealing with that. In some areas, this might be the third year of extreme drought that they're facing. So that, of course, brings a tremendous amount of stress. That brings in the economics of, can I keep doing this? It brings in that multi-generational stress of, am I going to let down generations of my family that have built this before me? In other areas, we have severe wildfires that are burning in agricultural areas across Canada. We've had very, very wet seasons in some places. And on top of that, what I've heard across the provinces is that everything seems to be very spotty. And so instead of having a full county or municipality that's able to declare a state of emergency for drought, you may only have a portion of that county being affected. And so then that can add some additional challenges for producers that are looking to, especially on the ranching side, maybe have some of those federal support programs that would be triggered by that county being able to declare that state of emergency. So there's a lot of stress going on right now. Some areas we're starting to see rain, which of course this is when you're not going to want to see it when you're out in the field trying to get the crop off. So I'd say for the most part, weather's really been that overarching stressor. And then just add it to, all the other uncertainties and challenges that come with farming.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And as you mentioned, for many, this is not just this year of particular challenges. This can be 2-3 years of challenges back to back. And you bring up the key point there with, this is running a business, yes, but often we are multi-generational farms. These are, business entities and land that's perhaps been in the family forever. How do you help farmers sort of navigate that legacy and responsibility to their family aspect of trying to shoulder, just the everyday of getting through a really stressful time?
I think that's where we bring it back to those tools and coping mechanisms that we can learn when things aren't really stressful as well. Boundaries are really important. I remember one year combining in drought where, yields were so bad, the drought had been so bad that I actually put black electrical tape over the yield monitor in the combine because constantly seeing how low that number was just putting me on this, very poor spot with my mental health for 14 hours a day. So what boundaries can we incorporate? keep talking to people, especially in your family dynamic. I know when times are hard and things are stressful, sometimes that adds an increased barrier to talking to a spouse because you feel like you've let them down. They might be feeling like they've let you down, especially in that family dynamic. It's really important to keep having those conversations, being open about, hey, I'm stressed, knowing what you need. Can you still find ways to do a little bit of self-maintenance? Maybe that means shutting down at supper, having dinner with the family, taking that half hour instead of just spending it in the equipment, because that's going to be something that's good for everybody to kind of recharge their batteries and de-stress a little. And then, maybe it's reaching out to someone that doesn't know you, but understands the industry in an anonymous setting. And that's why we launched Ag Talk, which is our national peer-to-peer support platform, free for anyone 16 years and older, fully anonymous. It's available across Canada, French and English, and monitored 24/7 by mental health clinicians. And you can access that by going to our website, which is domore.ag/agtalk.
Really key there, I think, and it's wonderful to hear it sort of as that reminder of those sort of those incremental things that you can do, that it's not one big, you really do have to navigate through harvest. I mean, the only way out is through, right? And so even a tough harvest, you still have to keep going. And so it's great to hear that sort of, it's okay to stop for that 30 minutes and share a meal as opposed to just pushing through and eating by yourself in the combine kind of thing. And as you mentioned, yes, Ag Talk is out there as well, which is the new platform that Dumore has launched. How that is just getting going. How has the initial sort of launch of Ag Talk gone?
It's gone really well, and it's been interesting to, we don't have the specifics of who signs on, obviously, with the anonymity piece, but we do know what they're using to hashtag what they're talking about when they post. And there's definitely some unique to farming pieces there, that economic stress or that, that multi-generational piece. One of the other things I was thinking while you were talking about how it can just be the little things, though, is sometimes social media can be really challenging when we are going through something, especially, like a drought year or, under stress from other factors, that being online and seeing someone who has, that bumper crop or that isn't in the same circumstances can be really hard for us. So just being aware of all of those little ways that we can kind of protect ourselves to, like you said, we need to get through harvest to get on to that next step. And with Ag Talk, the beauty of that platform is that you're having a conversation with people that get it. So even if you're not going there for support, you can go there to read what other people are posting, and in doing so, understand that you're not alone. And just that in itself can make someone feel so much better. Or maybe you're in a pretty good place and you can actually go there to support others and help build community.
Mm-hmm. Let's face it, social media is a blessing and a curse. And
Yes.
like the black tape on the yield monitor, sometimes just either putting limits or maybe deleting the app from your phone can really be helpful. And because let's face it, sometimes it's not the greatest place. So really good tips there, Megz. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for joining me. And just one more time for anyone who perhaps is curious about Ag Talk or wants to know more about the Dumore Ag Foundation and the good work that you do, where should people go?
Best place to go is our website, which is domore.ag, and there's a full resource page there. Everything's broken down either nationally or provincially, so you can find resources that are close to home. You can read blog posts and tips and all sorts of other things. So instead of scrolling social media, you could be on there doing some reading and some learning. And you can also donate there if you're looking to support mental health and ag.
Wonderful. All right, Megz, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Introducing the Arion 600 Series tractor by Claas, where versatility meets productivity head on, because you've got jobs to do. Mowing, tedding, raking, baling, loading, filling, tilling, cleaning, spreading, hauling, feeding. This is multi-purpose reimagined to do the work for you. It's more than just power. The Arion 600 tractor gets it done.
Boron is an essential micronutrient for plant growth, and without boron, your crops can't absorb the macronutrients they need for higher yields. Although borates occur naturally, boron deficiency is a common soil problem. Whether in direct soil application, through fertigation, or as a foliar spray, US Borax has the right refined product for your crops. US Borax products are specifically formulated to combine with other fertilizers, lowering your application costs. Learn more at borax.com/ag.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Tuesday, August 22nd. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. And this segment is brought to you by Savita and the Titans of Agronomy. Calling all Ontario soybean growers, Savita International invites you to join their Titans of Agronomy events featuring an array of industry experts. And wait for it, guys, including Peter Johnson, Albert Tenuta, Horst Bonner, Greg Stewart, and me, Lyndsey Smith, and commodity expert Bailey Elkinger. I think that's how we say her name. Okay. Join them in Woodstock next week on August 31st or at the newly renovated site in Inkerman, Eastern Ontario on September 7th. That's the one I'll be at, everybody. Pre-register at savita.com/events for Titans of Agronomy. Okay. As promised, joining me now, Kelvin Heppner of Real Agriculture out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how are you?
Doing well here, Lyndsey, and honored to be here in the presence of a titan of agronomy.
A titan. Yeah, you know what? I'm actually just moderating the panel. So let's maybe bring it down.
Don't downplay yourself. Don't downplay yourself. You can add that one to your Twitter bio.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I don't put myself with Peter and Albert and Horst and Greg. But yeah, so there we go. Okay, we have, though, it is Tuesday, time to do a bit of a catch-up on news because we do have a couple key things that have happened. Most notably, we've got some AgriRecovery news, which has been a long time coming, as well as some, I think we've got some drought maps for deferred tax. We've got a lot to go through. So catch us up. Saskatchewan, Alberta, we've got news on AgriRecovery.
Yeah, a series of different pieces of information that we've gathered here over the last day, basically, when it comes to AgriRecovery disaster relief programs for livestock producers affected by the drought in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Both provinces, as well as BC, back in July, submitted requests to the federal government for an AgriRecovery assessment, which is the first step in offering, eventually getting to an AgriRecovery program, which is like basically Canada's version of a disaster relief program. And any program under AgriRecovery is cost shared on a 60-40 basis between the federal and the participating provincial government. So yesterday, Saskatchewan didn't officially say these were AgriRecovery dollars, but they announced that they're committing up to $70 million in provincial funds to help offset the costs of feeding and maintaining the breeding herd in the province. So cattle, goats, all types of grazing animals, keeping that breeding herd sustained. So the province contributing so far up to $70 million, and assuming that's potentially, the idea here is that will be the 40%, or could be the 40% Saskatchewan's portion there in terms of an AgriRecovery program to be announced. Alberta has not announced its contribution to a drought relief program, but Agriculture Minister RJ Sigurdson did say that they're also working on drafting program eligibility and that they're planning to offer something similar to what was offered in 2021, which was an AgriRecovery program, the Canada-Alberta Livestock Feed Assistance Program, for example. And so both provinces, we understand, have reached a deal with the federal government, or they have come to an agreement with federal officials that they are going to move ahead on AgriRecovery, but they're still working through the technical details as to how much money will be allocated to this, what the criteria will be for application by producers, who will be eligible to receive this funding, how much funding, what will be covered, all those types of things have yet to be determined. The Minister of Agriculture in Alberta, Lyndsey, yesterday said that he's hoping to have a further update by mid-September, and that's in line with what we're also hearing. One thing to add about this, because of the significant number of dollars that are going to be involved here, based on Saskatchewan's government, the federal government has a policy when numbers get this big that the agriculture minister alone can't approve this. It has to go to finance and also the prime minister's office. So Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau, or Trudeau's office, will also have to approve this. So that adds to the timeline before this money may actually be announced and dispersed, the process starting where payments would actually be handed out to producers.
So there's a few things here. One, just for clarification, the disaster relief program, this is the one, it is triggered by the province, right? Like the province essentially says, hi, we need this. And is it the province that basically says, this is how much we're going to give, and then the federal government has to decide? Is it sort of a bottom up approach, or can it work the other way?
The province has to trigger the initial request for that assessment, but the funding side of it is kind of a negotiation back and forth, and in terms of what they want to cover. It does sound like, sure, it has to go to finance and the Prime Minister's office for approval, but it does sound like that is expected at this point. So both levels of government in Alberta and Saskatchewan have agreed that they want to move ahead, that they feel there's a need. The criteria is met to offer AgriRecovery here to livestock producers due to how dry it's been and the feed shortage. And whether this means moving feed or moving livestock to feed, those are probably the two things that are going to be covered here in terms of a general overarching sense. But they've reached that part of the process, but they still haven't hammered out the rest of the details. And it sounds like it could still be 3-4 weeks away before we have more information on this.
Which, I'll be honest, if you're like me and you spend a lot of time on any, livestock sale groups on Facebook, which I know is not allowed, but guess what? They happen. There's already quite a few, at least on the sheep side, and sheep would be covered under this as well, that we're already seeing, at least from my perspective, quite a few people recognizing they do not have the feed to keep everybody over winter. And I'm seeing quite a few dispersals already. I think most livestock operators recognize, there's always some you could trim and still sort of maintain your business, but it only could get really bad from here the longer this takes, if you've got no sort of insurance as to whether or not you'll have any funding to support the flock or the herd through the winter. The other thing here, you did mention, is it feed to animals or animals to feed? We did see that in 2021 where we had support for transport costs to potentially move animals to feed. So I guess we'll wait and see what's happening there. Just quickly, before we leave this, though, there was also an announcement on, and we see this relatively often as far as tax deferral in drought areas. So we did see a map that has confirmed where we'll have tax deferral already.
Correct. That's an initial assessment list of designated regions. So mainly in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. Part of Manitoba here, actually, where I live in the south central part of the province, is also in this area. And this is if a livestock producer has had to sell at least 15% of their breeding herd, they can defer that income for tax purposes. And so in both these cases, the livestock tax deferral announcement yesterday and also the info that we saw regarding potential AgriRecovery programs, this is being announced at this point to send a signal to producers that there is going to be some help here. It may not, it obviously won't go a huge way in terms of making them whole or anything like that from the impact of drought, but that's why government made these announcements yesterday at both levels, because they want to send that signal earlier on now while decisions are being made about herd dispersals and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. It is that time of year. Everybody's got to look at what you got.
I should also mention BC has an AgriRecovery request as well, but from our understanding, they aren't quite they're still in the assessment stage, maybe not quite at the point of reaching that agreement where they have committed to moving ahead with one.
And that, I mean, we'll just have to keep tabs on that one, in that just as far as the wildfires go as well. I don't know, it feels like we're a long way from the full sort of brunt of this whole summer of drought and fire really having its impact. So yeah, we'll keep tabs on that one as well. Let's switch gears a little. We've got one update, and I know we meant to talk about this on Friday, but on the issues panel, but Mexico and the US and biotech corn, there's certainly been rumblings and discussion on how Mexico plans to deal with genetically modified corn. The U.S. has now brought a dispute panel forward. What is the latest on this file?
Yeah, we saw last week the U.S., as you mentioned, formally requested a dispute settlement panel. So they've taken all the other steps in the USMCA trade dispute resolution process up until now, and they haven't been successful. So now they're requesting a dispute settlement panel. And this is regarding Mexico's decree to basically ban the use of GM corn in human food products and extending that ban into animal feed and other consumer products like cosmetics and textiles and that type of thing in the future. So that's where the U.S. is leading the fight here, but Canada has actually signed on in some ways around this dispute through the USMCA, backing the U.S. side here as there are concerns about Mexico's position. We did see Mexico's economy minister speaking to Reuters yesterday, on Monday, say that Mexico won't be making any changes to the decree on genetically modified corn ahead of this dispute settlement panel, and that basically Mexico is standing its ground and saying they believe there's justification for this and that they'd like to investigate the science and form a scientific committee or investigation together with the U.S. to look into the impact of GM corn on people and that type of thing. And this is, of course, something that the U.S. and Canada authorities would say this science has been investigated at length for decades, and Mexico still wants to stand up and says that it has a scientific argument for this. So, yeah, it looks like this is headed to... not a super. Doesn't look like a resolution on this is imminent at this point.
Well, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around the disruption on trade on this.
Yeah, with
what? Right?
Well, some of that is already happening.
Yeah.
With what's already in place. So. Yeah, and Canada's concern here isn't so much on corn, but on the canola side of things, as Mexico is a major customer of Canadian canola, which 90+% of Canadian canola is genetically modified or biotech. So that's where if Mexico continues down this path, it could cause, like you said, trouble on the trade front in many areas.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got just a bit of time. Quick update. I found something this morning, came across my desk, that I thought maybe I was seeing double. There's now another bill that is looking, now this one directly says looking to bring back, so this is in the U.S., looking to bring back MCOOL, so mandatory country of origin labeling again. Am I seeing things, Kelvin? Is this really happening again?
I think we are seeing double here. It is happening again, and this is from Representative Dusty Johnson, Republican from South Dakota, looking to reinstate country of origin labeling, mandatory COOL. We did see legislation earlier this year in the U.S. Senate from Senator Thune and Booker. There were a few senators, I think, signing on to that one. So I'm not sure. We'd need somebody to explain this to us, why maybe it's the fact that this is happening in both houses in the U.S. Congress that maybe there's a plan there. I'm not sure. But basically saying that bring back MCOOL, but at the same time make it so that it's WTO compliant. And that's the big question mark here. Can that be done? Is that even possible?
Well, I think that's the same question of the bill that's in the Senate is, can it be? And that's sort of the idea. And so they've taken the tact of making it voluntary and hoping that skirts the rules. But they also didn't call it MCOOL. This is flat out calling it MCOOL. I don't know. Anyway, okay. All right.
Canada and Mexico do still have their standing rulings from the WTO on this. So there is the hammer can be dropped if there's a feeling here that this is a return of MCOOL and that the criteria hasn't been met to make it WTO compliant. Canada does have a list of things that are WTO authorized that tariffs could be applied against U.S. products, over $1 billion in tariffs. So that could come back here.
Yeah, absolutely could. And times are interesting in the beef industry. So let's see where that goes. I sort of, in my mind, it sort of made more sense when like cattle prices were in the dumpster. You'd think these are the kind of things you'd see, but now cattle prices are actually quite strong. And so it boggles my mind a little, but that's just me. Politics. Okay. All right, Kelvin, you will be back for the issues panel on Friday, I hope. So we will talk more then, and we'll see if we've got some updates on some of these stories. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Talk to you later.
All right. And with that, we wrap another Tuesdays with Lyndsey. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Thank you for all of my guests for making time for me today as well. And thank you for listening. As always, you can send your feedback to that feedback line, 1-855-776-6147, or you can find us across social media at RealAgriculture, or you can go old school and go to RealAgriculture.com and check out all the great stuff that we do there, including past episodes of this show. All right, I will be back tomorrow. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. We're going to talk markets. It's going to be great. We'll chat then.